Why don't you believe that white privilege exists? I just want to get your understanding first, and then we could go from there.
Well, let's just, is there anything that you can't do that I can do?
No, we could do the same things if we put our minds to it.
Good. Then there's no white privilege.
But when white folks were asked that question in 1963, when it was happening, when it was the present, not 60 years in the rearview mirror, and they were asked it by the Gallup organization in that year. The question was, do you believe black folks are treated equally in your community in education, housing, and employment? Now, come on, y'all. It's 1963. We know the answer. This is before the Civil Rights Act, before the Voting Rights Act, before the Fair Housing Act. It is the year of the March on Washington, the year that Medgar Evers is shot down dead in his driveway in Jackson, Mississippi, the year that Governor Wallace stands in the schoolhouse door at the University of Alabama and says, segregation today, segregation tomorrow, segregation forever. It is the year that he turns those dogs and water cannons in Birmingham on those children at the behest of Bull Connor. So we know the answer to the question. This is not a hard pop quiz. The answer is no, but what do you think white Americans in 1963 said? 2 out of 3 answered the question, yes, everything here is fine. There is nothing to see. There are only 2 possible explanations for why the vast majority of white folks couldn't see the truth. Explanation number 1 is that white folks are just so stupid and ignorant and cold-hearted that they just can't see or just refuse to see. I don't happen to believe that's true. I think there's an easier and a more disturbing answer to the question, and it's about privilege. The reason white folks didn't know is because they didn't have to know.
Now, have you ever wondered why privilege is so hard to see for the people who have it? And imagine carrying an invisible backpack filled with shortcuts, advantages, and even second chances you never asked for, but you've always had. Now, that's the story of white privilege. It's not about blame, it's not about guilt, it's about awareness, because the most powerful systems in our world don't scream in your face. They whisper in the background, shaping who wins and who struggles without ever calling it by name. So today we are pulling back the curtain on a truth that has remained invisible for centuries until now.
The thing about white privilege, and I'm going to touch your hand when I say this, so hold my hand, is that the struggles and trauma you went through suck. But they didn't happen because you were white. And that's the thing. I will go through things in every space I occupy on every continent in every country that you won't understand because I look like this and you look like that. Example, we both might be broke by the end of the day, but when you popped out the womb, your mother's first thought was not, what is a racially ambiguous, gender ambiguous name I can give you that will give you a leg up in life? Your mom just gave you a name. And I can explain to you all of the well-researched, well-backed up ways that privilege has colored your life in a way that you are yet to understand. But before you listen to me, you will decide that you hate me because that is easier. And that is a privilege that you get to have. You get to maneuver the world with your anger and hate based on your trauma without ever thinking about the nuances, much less living them. And that is the privilege that you choose to not understand.
The biggest privilege white people have is not institutional access. Arguably, the biggest privilege that white people have is not having to be hyper-aware of their identity at all times. But keep in mind, I said hyper-aware. That doesn't mean that the white man doesn't know he's a white man and the white woman doesn't know she's a white woman. What it means is that they don't choose to or have to compartmentalize their identities constantly for survival or social proof. In the African community, in the black community, we are too aware of our identities as a result of our circumstances under colonialism, imperialism, and racism in this world. We spend most of our lives playing these word games about who's really black, who's light-skinned, who's dark-skinned, who's brown-skinned, who's really African, who's African-American, who's ADOS, who's South African, who's really African, who's East African. We waste our time and our talent playing these identity politics when the real politics we need to be playing is the politics of material acquisition in international relations. In no way should we deny our experiences under colorism, under texturism, under tribalism. But if we spend our lifetimes, our efforts, our talents, and our energy focused towards these things, then what room do we have? What space do we have to acquire material conditions for our community? The light skins got stories, the brown skins got stories, the dark skins got stories, the African Americans got stories, the Caribbean Africans got stories, the immigrants got stories, the continental Africans got stories, the European Africans got stories. And again, I will never deny any of our experiences. But we tell these stories and we obsess over these stories and we build our identity upon these stories, but we never tell the story of our material conditions. If we're not addressing our stories under imperialism, I think the other stuff can wait. If we're not addressing our stories under the European patriarchy, I think the other stuff can wait. If we're not addressing our stories under colonialism, I think the other stuff can wait. If we're not addressing our stories under the prison industrial complex, under the healthcare system that disproportionately affects our women, I think the other stuff can wait. Which again, going back to the point of my video, is the reason why white people are ahead in this country. Because while they have the privilege to focus on their material conditions, you're worried about, do people like you or not? How beautiful are you to the beauty standard?
If you could be any race other than the one you are, which would it be?
There's obviously not like actual equality with people of color, so it's hard to say I want to put myself in that position. Like, it would be unrealistic to say that there is racial equality. I mean, I definitely have privilege being white, so that's nice.
Like, what is white privilege?
It's the ability to like do things without scrutiny, whereas people of other races would be scrutinized.
Most white people don't see racism. I know that it seems unbelievable because the signs are there if you look for them, but we don't see racism because we're spoiled. That's right, I said it. Here's how I personally illustrate this as an analogy from my personal experience. I have had problems with my feet all my life, and if I am having foot pain, all I can think about is how much my feet hurt. But when I found a style of shoes that were right for me, I realized I hardly ever think about my feet anymore because they don't bother me now. If something is causing you pain, you think about it. You think about how to make it stop. Or you give up thinking about it ever stopping and you think about how to endure it, how to live with it, how to fight it, how to minimize it. And that applies whether it's foot pain or racism. Most white people very rarely have to think about race unless we make a decision to think about it. And that's a choice for us. It's optional. It's not something we're forced to confront every day. As white parents, we tell our kids, if you get into trouble, find a police officer. They'll help you. Black parents would never do that. People of color give the talk about how to minimize the risk of getting killed by cops. If something doesn't hurt you, you don't learn to watch out for it. That is why white people don't get it when it comes to race. We walk through the world thinking our experience is the norm. So when black people describe being followed, being profiled, denied, or dismissed, it doesn't line up with what we have experienced. So we assume that black people are exaggerating, or too often we assume that it means that it's just not really happening. But the truth is, and I'm talking to white people here, racism isn't always blatant. It's not always a burning cross or a lynching. Sometimes it's a policy or a pattern that benefits us and makes us comfortable, so comfortable that we don't even notice.
White privilege is invisible because it was designed to be. It doesn't announce itself, it doesn't carry a label, and it doesn't always look like wealth or power in obvious forms. Now, instead, it exists in the silent assumptions, the unspoken expectations, and even the everyday experiences that shape lives without ever being questioned. And for someone born white, privilege often shows up as the absence of barriers rather than the presence of benefits. And it means moving through life without the heavy weight of stereotypes pressing on your back, without even worrying if your skin color will define how people see your intelligence, your worth, or your right to belong. Now, the invisibility of white privilege is what makes it so powerful. And for those who live with it, the world often feels fair, it feels natural and even neutral. And rules look equal, opportunities seem available to everyone, and justice feels blind. But when you stand outside that circle, the cracks become glaring. And the job you didn't get, not because of your qualifications, but because of your name, the store clerk who follows you down the aisle, not because you look suspicious, but because you're not white. And the police encounter that escalates, not because of your actions, but because of the color of your skin. And to those without privilege, the system feels rigged. And to those who feel like, or with privilege, the system feels invisible. And what even makes privilege so hard to recognize is that it doesn't feel like a reward. Most white people aren't walking around feeling privileged. They may be struggling with bills, battling illnesses, or even facing difficulties, and yet even in those struggles they are often shielded from the additional burden of racial bias, and that shield is invisible until you see someone who doesn't have it. And privilege doesn't guarantee success, but it grants the benefit of the doubt, the presumption of innocence, the chance to be judged as an individual rather than a stereotype. And to truly see privilege, you have to listen to voices outside your own. It means sitting with discomfort, confronting denial, and even realizing that fairness isn't about everyone starting from the same place. It's about acknowledging the invisible head start some people never had to earn. And it means recognizing that privilege isn't just about individual experiences, but about generations of structures that were built to uplift one group while holding others down. And the question is not whether privilege exists, but the question really is whether we are brave enough to see it, and even to name it, to change it, because privilege is only invisible until someone points it out. And once you see it, if you can definitely not unsee it. And the awareness is the first step, not toward guilt or shame, but toward responsibility. And responsibility to create a world where opportunity doesn't come from skin color, where justice isn't selective, and where the invisible advantages of a few no longer define the lives of the many.